Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am authorized to assure you that so far there is no reasonable cause for alarm. The rumors of invading armies and mass destruction are based on hysteria and are absolutely false. I repeat, these rumors are absolutely false.
Welcome to Thoughtspeak, a podcast dedicated to the discussion of K. Applegate's 1996 book series, Animorphs. My name is Coleman.
And my name is Mitchell. And what up, everybody? We are glad to be back.
Oh, it's absolutely exciting to jump back into the podcasting of our favorite book series. Is that too strong, favorite book series?
You know what? We might as well just say it is.
The book series we were most interested to start a podcast about and talk about way longer than we thought we would.
Well, you know, it's got a lot of entries into the series, so it's a natural fit for a podcast because there can be so many episodes. I mean, if we had decided to cover Michael Grant's Gone series, just throwing that out there because I can see it on my bookshelf ahead of me, you know, it's like, 8 books or something? So 8 podcast episodes, probably not the greatest for a series unless it covered multiple series.
Hey, maybe at the end of this whole thing, we're all wrapped up on Vegemorphs. We'll put it to a vote on which fan fiction continuation of the series that we jump into.
Sure. I mean, we can have tons of things going on after we finish the initial run of episodes. But either way, if you're listening to this podcast episode in real time as it's being released, it might have been a little while since our last episode that we put out. We are entering... Yeah, we are entering the summer months now, which is just, as a general rule, usually always busier for the both of us.
Yeah, and I think it's going to ease up for me a little bit. So if I was kind of a stopping point for the last couple months, because I work at a university, so the end of a semester is rough, especially the spring semester. So I'm actually going to ease up a little bit. I got a few projects going on this summer, but should be a more regular schedule on my end.
Yeah, right on, exactly. And I will be starting a new job, hopefully, very soon here. So my schedule is going to be shifting around a bit as well. But I can tell you that I will be moving to a 4-day work week. So that should be more time for podcasting. Then again, I'm also on 2 other podcasts covering TV shows that are about to start up again. So... it's gonna get a little dicey here, a little crazy.
Plus, that kitty yours is still alive, isn't she?
I think so. I think she's in the cage right now as we speak.
Okay,
as we do this,
just rattle a little bit, make sure.
Well, she's a pretty independent 8-month-old. I think she'll be all right.
Yeah, you don't need to check on her. You hate those helicopter parents, you know, all around them.
She loves it when I put her in the helicopter and we go for a ride. I don't know if that's what you were talking about, but that's what I choose to believe.
Hey, just be quiet. Let's move on. Let's thank our Patreons, because those are the real heroes.
Good call. Exactly.
After a break, they're still with us, still loving us. Just great. They're heroes among men.
Exactly. Speaking of which, if you want to support the show and help us keep doing this, you can become a Patreon subscriber at patreon.com/Thoughtspeak. We will thank you if you do so, which we will do now. So very special thanks to Spencer, Dan, oh my God, Jaleo, Ben Freeman, thank you very much, Jennifer Baker, James Miola, Dominic Kaheen, Kendra, Kevin Koslowski, Graith, thank you all very much. We still got some more. Dan Zander, Daniel Martinoli, Nita Labrada, Gaffaro. I still can nail that one. Michael Blemick, and Sorrent Joyce. Hey, thank you all so very much for subscribing and throwing your monies at us whenever we release one of these dumb episodes. Very, very grateful. Recently, I believe we've lost a subscriber or two, but it's okay. We're still hanging in there. We're hovering around that $100 mark per episode, and that's really where we want to be. So thank you all very much.
What other podcast could your name butchered that badly? I mean, it's good fun for you, for us, and you know, we do really appreciate everybody who's given so far and who's signed up as a subscriber. I will say that there's some dangling fruit of rewards if we end up going higher. We're talking a new website, new community boards, possible extravagant rewards if we get even higher in the
whoa.
Scale,
Try not to promise too much, because then we might actually have to follow through.
Fulfill your dreams left and right, whatever you wish for, we'll give it.
Possibly.
Everyone's going to be a millionaire if we get to a certain point. That's a promise I can make.
There's eventually going to come a point where we're just like done with episodes. Like, we finish the series, we talk about everything we need to talk about afterwards, and then we're just going to have this Patreon for I don't know what. If people are still paying us at that point, I'll be very surprised.
I will say this: if our Patreon does get higher, it does go up. Not only does that really, we really appreciate it. It helps pay for the show, because for a long time that burden was on our backs. It was on our families, and you guys just putting in a little bit each. I mean, it really takes that stress off us, so we can continue doing the show, put out episodes promptly, that sort of thing. But in the future, I really want that Patreon to support something that we leave behind that is for the Animorphs community, and that, you know, if Animorphs ever continues or it gets a sequel series, we'll be right there at the forefront with whatever we end up giving you, which right now we've got plans. You can check it out at patreon.com/Thoughtspeakcast, and it's just there's a lot on there, and we really appreciate anything anyone gives.
Yes, exactly. You know what else I'd like to see more of? iTunes rating and reviews. Since our last episode, we've got a couple more, and I want to share one with you because it's really nice. This is a 5-star iTunes review, and it's from somebody named Awesome Rivers. He says, loved and still love the Animorphs. Reread them a couple years ago and followed a review blog then. Was just thinking about them again and stumbled onto this podcast a couple weeks ago. Up to book 15 on the reviews now. You guys are funny and insightful. I enjoy the arguing at times too. So far, I've realized I've been tending to agree with Mitch more when it comes to analysis and rating, but you both are enjoyable to listen to. I'm sure when I catch up with your reviews, I'll probably send an email or something, and then to express my opinion, and no one will care about it. Thanks for these, though. Well, I tell you what, Awesome, we care, and if you send us an email, we'll read it. And you, too, can leave us a very kind rating and review on iTunes or Stitcher or whatever site you use for podcasts.
Yeah, and those also help the word out about the show, get us more listeners, and just build the Animorphs community and people rereading the books and getting back into them. But speaking of emails, we do have another email as well. So I just want to read that out. It comes from Sarah Houston. First time writing in. Love that this podcast is out here. Some of the stuff you guys point out, like how when Ellen is writing The Illusion, she shows the way they act different towards their classmates now instead of just saying war changed them, are great examples to show do's and don'ts of writing characters. But what I really write in to say is about adaptation. I love cartoons. I've seen some really dark moments that can be done in animation. I was for a cartoon animation. She's referring to our classic animation versus live-action adaptation fight.
The classic debate.
Yeah, I was for cartoon animation, then I remembered Marvel. I think they could do a fantastic adaptation. They use heavy special effects in pretty much all their movies. They could balance humor and drama. Even the absurd scenes would probably be hilarious if they found the right people to cast. It seems like a perfect fit now. If there was a screen adaptation of our Animorphs, then I'm for live action. But I wonder if adapting it would be a good idea at all. I'd love new content and more fans, but the violence alone in a faithful adaptation would give this movie an R. The ways I could see that going is watering down or adding things in, since they already have an R. What adaptation would we really get? Now, I have to disagree with Sarah a little bit. I think, I'm kind of a big movie buff, and I feel like the kind of violence we see in an Animorphs movie would mostly be animal on alien or vice versa.
Very fantasy violence.
Yeah,
so to speak.
In the past, Hollywood's been all for that. I think it would get a PG-13 tops. And it could be incredibly violent, guts spilling out. As long as they're purple or they're coming out of a tiger, I don't think Hollywood cares.
Well, if they made the Hunger Games PG-13, I think they can make Animorphs work.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, how many Terminator movies have we gotten that are PG-13 now? And
Although I do gotta say, something about Marvel's The Animorphs kind of rubs me the wrong way.
Hey,
I'm not a fan of that.
better than DC's The Animorphs.
Sure,
I say that,
but
on
barely.
I say that on the eve of Wonder Woman being released, and I stand by it.
Hey, go for it. I'm not the hugest fan of how Marvel's handled their properties in the last decade or so.
You gotta give it to them for reaching a broad audience, and the fact that Avengers even exists is kind of amazing. I mean, now it seems so normal, but I mean, there was nothing like that before. It was like a TV series with a movie budget. I mean, it's pretty incredible.
Sure, they're stepping in the right direction, but I mean, there's so many other filmmakers and studios that would just do a magnificent job with this property that I don't see the necessity of putting it in this big studio.
I'd like to see Lionsgate handle it. I think Lionsgate or Blumhouse. Blumhouse has been killing it lately with making low budget movies, but still giving them a medium sized budget, and then like making the money back tenfold. Blumhouse lets creators and directors really do what they want without going overboard. Their only restriction is budget, and I think Animorphs needs a restriction on it, especially in the first movie, to just pull those creative juices out. And I was still all for live action. It just got to be handled properly.
Okay. You know what? I'll make a concession here with you. I am okay with an Animorphs live action film only if it is done by Quentin Tarantino.
No, he would butcher it, I think.
No, he would add fantastic dialogue and amazing action scenes to a property that we already know has that. So
no,
I just think he'd do a great job.
No, here's who needs to handle it. Matt Reeves. Matt Reeves is one of the best working directors out there right now. Started out with Cloverfield. He's now moved on to he's done other various movies. He did Kick-Ass. But he's right in the middle of doing the new Planet of the Apes movies. And they are a perfect representation of what can be done with Animorphs. They're incredibly violent, dead serious movies, all about war, shown from a crazy perspective. The apes are the main characters.
Yeah, with animals.
Yeah, with animals, and it's beautiful CGI. It's some of the best working CGI out there right now. And it just works. They're great movies. They have something to say about life. And
you know what? Hollywood has had a lot of time to perfect their ape CGI. Okay, it's going to take a lot more than good-looking ape monkey CGIs to win me over.
Marco will look fly. We will know that at least. And the human characters, James Franco can play Jake. We'll be good to go.
Sure. On a completely separate note, I just want to point out that I went to the zoo today with with my wife and kid. Really? That's
I did
weird.
too. How did we not talk about this?
I have no idea. I would assume you would have saw my Facebook pictures and commented. Samesies.
So we're not here to talk about all that stuff. We're here to talk about book number 34, The Prophecy. It's one that I don't know if anyone's been waiting for necessarily.
Well, I never read this book, so I guess I was kind of waiting for it. And I'm led to believe that was the same with you.
I'll go one step further. I didn't know this plot. Of all the ones people joke about or talk about or discuss, I didn't even know this plot existed. That there was another book that tied into the Hork-Bajir Chronicles.
Yeah, I'd always heard about it, but because I'd never read the Hork-Bajir Chronicles, I just assumed this was one I could skip and it wouldn't affect the plot overall. I guess I just never really cared to learn more about the Hork-Bajir history and culture.
Yeah, well, listen in, folks, and you'll see if we were right or wrong whether this fits into the rest of the series.
Oh, sure, yeah, we're going to learn a lot about, nothing really, I guess. That was a bad way to start that sentence. Anyway, yeah, like you mentioned, we're talking book 34, The Prophecy, and I'm going to go ahead and read the back here. There's a chance for the free Hork-Bajir on Earth to help start a rebellion against the Yeerks on the Hork-Bajir homeworld. And they've learned from the last surviving Arn, the race that created the Hork-Bajir, that Aldrea, daughter of Prince Ciro, knew the location of a stolen Yeerk vessel packed with weapons. Unfortunately, the only way to recover the ship is to ask Aldrea herself, and she's dead. But the Arn has Aldrea's personality stored, and Cassie, Rachel, or Toby Hami are the closest match. The only problem is that once Aldrea gets into one of their minds, she may not want to come out. Now, we've mentioned in the past about how these summaries aren't really doing some of these plots very justice. Some of them even seem like they were written before they had a complete draft of the story completed. This one, it just, when you read in the back of it, man, it's throwing out terms left and right, like, it's just very all over the place, it seems.
It must have been a tough one to write, the summary, but it might have made them read the book a little more closely. Although I disagree with it, throwing Cassie into the mix as one of the potential vessels for Aldrea.
Yeah, sure, they didn't mention Axe.
Yeah.
Because Axe was also very gung-ho about it.
Yeah, but either way, I mean, it's not one of the worst summaries, but yeah, it would throw off a new reader who, for some reason, is jumping in at 34.
Yeah, right. Well, and if you look at the cover of this book, this isn't one that I think you would start out with necessarily. I don't know. It's very strange with Cassie doing her like stride walk, slowly morphing into the Hork-Bajir, which it's cool to get some official Hork-Bajir art, as always. But I think, again, this is one of those stock images that they just use, like the Andalite, like Axe.
I don't know. They might have done this one from scratch because it looks a little different. But it looks like they touched it up a little bit, went a little more into detail. I could be wrong. But I do appreciate that she is doing, like you said, a little stride walk. And she starts out with her right arm, and then it moves into the left arm moving forward with the Hork-Bajir. That's a nice little design thing. It's like it actually gives it motion.
Oh, so. I never even noticed that. But yeah, that is strange. The whole like purpley cloud thing is kind of weird on this book. They do the clouds usually on most covers.
It sets it apart though. It looks a little more alien. I don't mind the design of it necessarily.
It's just, again, with the nondescript clothing and, well, first of all, the fact that they're even wearing clothing while doing these morphs just doesn't make sense with the story.
That's never going to go away.
Right. Flipping onto the inside cover, though, it's pretty sweet.
Yeah, it never happened, though. Not a scene from the book. There was never shooting down at them.
No, I don't recall a scene where multiple Hork-Bajir were having some kind of dance rave laser party. Because that's what it looks like, is these Hork-Bajir up top are chilling out.
That second Hork-Bajir from the right on the platform, why did they put his hand up? Why did it literally makes it look like a dance rave? You're right.
Because he's like, party over here. Where are you guys going?
Yeah, and then the one on the far left's like, yo, I'm here too. Just got here. What's going on?
Yo, man, I got the LSD, bro.
I think they had to draw some Hork-Bajir and just threw it together and called it a day.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not a terrible inside cover art thing as far as these books go.
Especially think it's original, too, because they had to draw for the first time multiple Hork-Bajir from different angles.
Sure, and this is probably the only official artwork in the series that has multiple Hork-Bajir, like, in a scene, you know? I can't think of any other books where we've got to see, like, a scene like this, you know?
I still disagree with this is a dumb thing to disagree with. I still disagree with the Hork-Bajir design, like the official design. I think it's not just about what I saw when I read it, but I think it really should be less reptilian for these tree-dwelling. Like, if you're just pulling from nature, I would have loved to have seen them be more apish or more anything that resembles something that lives in a tree, rather than dinosaur lizards.
It really does look like they had dinosaur lizard on their mind when they were creating this. Real quick, I glossed over the front cover quote, which is just so stupid. What you don't know can't hurt you, except for the Yeerks.
literally makes no sense. Is nonsense.
This is another one of those quotes that they just pulled from a list and were like, screw it, this one will probably do.
I think what it's trying to say is that it's trying to hint towards like their secret identities, and if the Yeerk knows it, then they would hurt them, except you are one of the Animorphs when it's saying you, and it's just bad. It's just
Look,
really,
they could have gone with the little quote they used on the inside cover. Cassie's definitely up a tree. And that would have made more sense.
No, because that would have referenced the book or the plot or, something that actually has to do with the book. And that's number one rule, marketing team. Don't mention the book.
Don't even read the book.
For those quotes. Don't read the book. Don't look at the series. Don't read the title. I'm surprised there's animals on the front of these books.
Right? Well, okay. We're going to dive into this one. You ready? You ready to dive?
Ready. You ready? I'm ready. I'm ready. Let's go.
Sure. Right away, these first chapters are always kind of disconnected, so to speak, from the plots. And they're usually just meant to kind of recap things while you've got the characters doing some stuff. But in this particular opening scene, we've got Cassie and Rachel in what is a blatant misuse of their powers, breaking into one of Cassie's teacher's houses. In morph, of course. Rachel's in her cat morph and Cassie's in a rat morph. And they're there to retrieve a very specific piece of paperwork that Cassie had turned into her teacher with an embarrassing doodle of, Cassie loves Jake or some nonsense on it. I got to be honest with you, not a very strong opening chapter. Pretty dumb.
I mean, of all the, we've seen Rachel and Cassie go on these personal missions before. Usually, Rachel is convincing Cassie to do something stupid. Of all of them, this one does start out pretty rough. This is not a good scene. I guess it was trying to like hint towards it being like they're on some dangerous mission for something serious, and then it's like surprise, Cassie just had his doodle. Right. It's not great. It's not executed well.
It didn't make me want to dive into the rest of the book. And you know what? I got to say that I think they tend to lean on, whenever it's a Cassie or Rachel book, usually pairing those two characters specifically, they put the girls together to do something. And it's usually kind of like the guys, this abusing their power, so to speak, for their own personal thing, but it's always something stupid. I'd like to see them not lean so much on, well, we got to pair the girls together because this is going to be a quote unquote girl book.
I think they were trying to plan out these, just like you just said, they were trying to plan out these first chapters to be something that pulls the Sweet Valley High type of kid in, or the Hardy Boys kid, like these, whether it's a boy or girl. Who just picks up the book because it's got a girl or boy on the front of it. They wanted to try to pull them in. So I think this is a very targeted opening chapter. But what I would love to see with these opening chapters in the book throughout the entire series is what they do with the ending chapters. A lot of the ending chapters are poignant and have to do with the rest of the book, or set up themes, or close out on themes, or just these little small scenes that give us a nice little send-off from whatever the plot was. They got really good at that last chapter, I think, in a lot of the Animorphs book. And if we would have had that in some of these first chapters, books could have even been better than they are now.
Yeah, I mean, I wish they could come up with a more clever lead-in to the story than their typical recap and the first chapter's like a throwaway. Like, in most of the books, you don't even need to read the first chapter.
Or if it's a Jake book, a nightmare. That's how the book starts.
Sure. Let's see. The good thing about this, though, is it wraps up quickly, and then we're into the plot. And just one of the first things I noticed... God, my throat. One of the first things I noticed about this book is... I'm just going to read it for you. We have Cassie talking about, the team and everything. And here we finally have an admission from her. Even though he never said it out loud, I knew that Jake loved me, and I knew Jake knew I loved him, even though I'd never said it out loud either. That was totally clear when we kissed. Yes, even though we don't walk around groping each other like some couples, we've kissed a few times, usually right after we've managed to survive something horrible. It's usually an I can't believe we're alive kiss. So that's pretty interesting. I mean, they don't. I remember the older books where they hadn't made references to their relationships and stuff. It's like a progression of the characters. Yeah, exactly.
Although I think we really needed a breaking point for that. They built that up so much in the beginning books, and while I think a lot of the audience wouldn't have liked a book that I'm about to propose, I kind of wish that we had a book that was all about them accepting that they're in love with each other and like that breakout moment where they actually just become a couple. Like I feel like we needed a whole book to have that release of their building, relationship tension. We never got that. We just it just gradually happened. They kissed a few times. Maybe that's a little more realistic, but I don't know. I kind of wanted that Ross and Rachel. She closes up, the cafe and then opens it back up, and he's out there in the rain, and they kiss. You never got that.
Not specifically like that, I suppose. The real plot of the story starts though when Cassie's flying around in Owlmorph or Birdmorph, and she sees a lone Hork-Bajir wandering around, and she's like all ready to attack it, and she almost does, but turns out it's just Jarahami, the free Hork-Bajir, or as I call him in my notes, Jarahami, the free HB. We're gonna say Hork-Bajir a lot in this episode and in our summary. So, yeah,
I really like this opening to the plot though, because Cassie has at least a page or two where she is flipping out that their secret has gotten out, and I think it's handled pretty well. Like she's going through all the options, what she should do. Who do they already have her parents? She's legitimately goes from 0 to 60 terrified, and I think it showed that well.
Sure, but of course, Jeremy just simply tells her that the reason he's out there is because one of the Arn has shown up. And if we recall from the Hork-Bajir Chronicles, the Arn are those species of aliens who were kind of dicks, I will say. They are really narrow-minded, and remember, they were very self-absorbed in their own little culture. And they were mad scientists, basically. I mean, they were this genius race who created the Hork-Bajir to keep their planet alive. And exactly. It's one of those very gray moments in the Animorphs series where some people could actually side with them and be like, hey, what they did, really nothing wrong with it. Other people see it as creating slavery. The problem is that they were just so complicit in the whole thing, especially with the Yeerks taking over their planet. They just basically sat on the sidelines and watched.
That was their big sin in my mind. The dealing with the Yeerks and letting the Hork-Bajir be actually enslaved by the Yeerks. But in my mind, the Arn created the Hork-Bajir. They at least gave them freedom. I don't think they're so bad for creating Hork-Bajir. Engineering a race from the get-go to want to take care of the trees, and that's a part of their lifestyle. I might be, pissing off a large part of the fan base or making myself seem morally corrupt, but I don't think there's anything wrong with that. They created this race who loved trees and were happy and, could go or do whatever they wanted. Maybe creating the monsters in the fog that killed them every once in a while wasn't the greatest, but
sure.
But the rest of it, I didn't think that was that bad. But yeah,
and you know what? They were a peaceful race themselves, and they made a peaceful race for their own specific purpose, and everything was fine until the Yeerks showed up and ruined it.
And they were the biggest hippies. They just wanted to save their planet. They weren't trying to take over the galaxy or anything. They just wanted to create some trees and have somebody take care of them.
Right. Well, if you recall, the specific reason they did it was because they needed a very specific mixture of oxygens or something from the trees, and that's why they had to engineer their own whole planet for it.
Well, here's what if the Hork-Bajir were a nanoscopic race of microbes, if they were molecules that went about their busy day keeping the trees alive and making them healthy, no one would have a problem with it. The fact that they're large and sentient, that's why people have an issue with it. And it's honestly a double standard, and you people make me sick.
Right. Moving on. So the Arn is back, and that's a big deal because, first of all, what's an Arn doing on Earth? They need to go figure that out. So, of course, they travel to the Free Hork-Bajir colony, everyone, and they go to meet with this last Arn. And let's see. There's just a lot to go through here. I've got something...
Well, his basic plot, what he wants, why he's on Earth, is that he wants to bring the Hork-Bajir back to Hork-Bajir. He wants free Hork-Bajir. And to do that, he needs the DNA of the free Hork-Bajir and the Hork-Bajir colony on Earth. He needs their DNA to create a new race of free Hork-Bajir.
Right. Before we even get into that, I just want to point out one thing on page 13 here. They're talking about it. I'm going to read this. I'm going to read this. An Arn on Earth. Here. Why? That's the question. What's he up to? Rachel wondered. He had to come. Star Wars The Phantom Menace isn't coming out on DVD there for like 2 years. And then he goes on to say, don't be dissing TPM, Marco said. Cool is cool. Oh, okay, such a sin.
It really is. And it's, okay, so we're actually having this renaissance with the Star Wars prequels right now, where a lot of people are coming back to them and saying, they had some great concepts. They're worth being a part of the Star Wars saga. But at this time and point when this had come out, that is so disconnected from the millions of people who could not stand the Phantom Menace, or not could not stand it, but like it was such a disappointment. The vast majority of people really, really hated the Phantom Menace just because it didn't live up to the standards of the original trilogy. So for them to have Marco, who is so pop culture savvy, be like, cool is cool, it's so disconnected. Even if you could say that they're young enough that a lot of young people really like the Phantom Menace and the prequels when they came out, Marco is so smart and cynical. He would have been part of the nerd group who really hated on the Phantom Menace and be like, oh, it didn't hold up to Empire Strikes Back. That would have been Marco in a nutshell. Well,
at the end of the day, really, we're just nitpicking about a very small sci-fi reference.
But it's funny. It's funny.
It's definitely a sin to call it cool.
Definitely.
So everybody's at the Hork-Bajir colony. They're meeting with this Arn who has shown up, and I feel like the Applegates or whoever was the ghostwriter in this one. Oh, I can tell you, it was Melinda Metz,
who's returning, who we've really, really enjoyed her work in the past.
Right. And as soon as we get to this whole scene where the Arn is kind of setting up his plot, they throw out like all of these terms, these names, these alien names. So first of all, the Arn, he's got one of the most complex names I think we've seen in the series, and I'm just going to tell you right now, it's Quafijinivan. That's his name.
That's a good pronunciation.
Quafijinivan. Yeah. Well, I've spent a lot of time thinking about it.
Let's call him Q, just to pull from the Applegates. I bet that's a reference they were making. Just call him Q though. That's straight from Star Trek.
Hey, you know what? If you have a hard time pronouncing it, you go right ahead, my friend. But he's Quafijinivan for me. But besides that, there's other terms that they're throwing out here, such as Ixala, which I kind of like, actually. It's pretty cool. And the Ixala is her ghost in the shell, so to speak. It's Aldrea's personality and memories stored in what they just call a bottle. And besides that, there's one other term for the actual like seance ceremony that they have to perform to summon her, and it is called an atafalxical. Okay, this one's hard because there's an X in it. Atafalxical. It's just so stupid. They were messing with the readers.
Could you pronounce it with a Z sound, where the X is?
Atafalxical. Atafalxical.
Yeah, I think that's probably how it's supposed to be.
Probably. Either way, I really think they were just screwing with us, especially with the Quafijinivan name.
Yeah, I like it. It's weird how you described it as a seance, and that's how they joke about it in the book, but it really is. It's like a scientific seance.
Yeah, that's exactly, I think, what they were going for here on this one. So they get there, and, he sets up this whole thing, which you mentioned, they need some Hork-Bajir DNA to create some more warriors and take them back, and then they want to arm them with this hidden weapon stash that Aldrea supposedly hid.
Yeah. And a big part of it is so the Ixia, It's got Aldrea from the Hork-Bajir Chronicles. That was the Andalite who turned into a Hork-Bajir and stayed as a Nothlit and fell in love with Dak-Hami, who is Jerahami's father. No.
Grandfather or something. The whole age and timeline thing never really made much sense to me.
Jerahami's grandfather, because Jerahami's father was Ciro Hami, who is named after Aldrea's father, which is where Ciro's kindness comes in. Because
Ciro died.
No, Ciro, her father died, but she named her first son Ciro.
Yeah, and that little Ciro, dead.
Yeah.
Super dead.
Yeah.
He didn't have any offspring.
Yes, he did.
He super
yes, he
died.
did. Ciro is died. That's how they're related. Toby's great grandmother is Aldrea.
You know what? I gotta tell you, I glossed over the Hork-Bajir lineage because I just frankly didn't care that much.
No, look, let me lay out real quick.
And another thing that this book does, or this series does, I should say, is making everybody related to everybody important.
Listen, I know, but listen, this is important. This is actually important to the plot of the book. Ciro was Dak-Hami and Aldrea's son. He was enslaved his entire life as a controller, but he was bred, or however the Yeerks handle it, he was bred to have Dak-Hami, who is Toby's father.
Dak was
Dak-Hami.
Ciro's father. Yo, you're getting confused now.
Oh yeah, dude, Dak is Ciro's. Jerahami is Ciro's.
Dear listener,
offspring.
let me just tell you, it's not worth trying to figure it all out.
It's actually important to the plot, so I'd like it to get it right. So we got it.
I know, because Toby's in the relation, but okay, whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, the most important thing here is that they've got their goal set up, and you know what? This is another book that was all A plot. There's no B plot. We're stuck with the team all the way through.
I disagree with that wholeheartedly. The B plot is whether Aldrea is going to give up Cassie's body or not.
Yeah, but there's no diversion from the A plot. I mean, it follows one linear story. You know what I mean?
No, but not necessarily, because there's a lot of internal stuff with Cassie, and it actually affected the A plot, what's happening in the B plot, because at some points Aldrea was leading them just based on wanting to see like her home or things like that. Like the B plot is actually incredibly important to the A plot, so I heartily disagree with you.
Well, that's not the way I separate it, though. I think this is one straightforward linear story, and
Can you name a B plot in
another
Animorphs book? In another Animorphs book?
Yeah, if you didn't surprise me with this question all of a sudden, and I can't. No, I'm not going to do that. No, request
no,
denied.
like the first Animorphs book. The B plot of that is their normal life, like their human life. What would you say? Give me an example.
First
of B
book,
so
the first book, I would also say there's no B plot. It's just straight through. It's all one story.
Oh, okay. Let me ask you this: is this a B plot? The book, I can't remember which one it is, but the book where Rachel's dealing with her father coming back, and they've got a mission. The A plot is the mission and all that. But
yeah,
her father...
Starfish book had great A and B plot.
No, not Starfish plot. The one where her father offers her a chance to move to New York with him.
Yes, exactly. There you go. That's A plot, B plot. A plot, them dealing with the whatever mission they were doing in that book, and then the B plot was the stuff going on in the side. So by your
standard, I would say this one definitely has a B plot that's important.
No, it doesn't. There's nothing going on the side. It is all self-contained in one story. There's multiple things happening within that story, but it's all one thing.
No, I honestly, I would break it up into their mission to get the weapons, and then the B plot is whether Cassie is going to give up her body or not to Aldrea. It's a big
that's
thing.
Just something that's happening within the one story, though.
Well, then Rachel dealing with her father giving her an option to move to New York is just something she was dealing with during the mission.
No, because I was independent from that. God, you just don't get it. We're moving on.
Gosh.
Let's see. They do that. Okay. There was something else I wanted to read here. I'm pretty sure I got my book open to a page.
I've only got 3 notes, and my other 2 are.
Oh, here's a cool thing. Okay, so they're talking about like they wanna get into doing this whole seance thing, and they're trying to plan out like if they're gonna go to the Hork-Bajir planet, they're gonna get the Chi to take over for them. And I really like that they make mention here where Cassie's like, if we don't return, ... and Eric offers, we could stay with your families if you really wish. And they have to tell him, like, no, let's just, if we die, let's say we died, you know? It's not nice to lead our families on like that.
I'm actually surprised they haven't had this conversation before with them.
Yeah, and, you know, I would have liked to see it sooner or maybe in its own self-contained book, because love them Chis, and would love to get some side stories.
Oh my gosh, a Chi book written from the perspective of the Chis where they think the Animorphs are dead, and they have to figure out what to do with their families or how to tell them.
Yeah, and then at the very end, like, they come back. That'd be great.
Yeah, that would be great. And you can see, like, a day-to-day life of Chi and them impersonating and all the funny antics they get up. And then maybe the Yeerks are involved. Like, the Yeerks are getting close to the secret of the Animorphs, and so the Chi have to do something to, like, they have to go on a mission to, like, divert the Yeerks or make them think something different. Oh, man, that book writes itself.
It very well could, yeah. Let's see. So they're all about this mission. Everybody's down. The Free Hork-Bajir are willing to give their DNA up to Quaffijinivan, and they want to, you know, blast off. But this is something that I've been waiting for a long time. Everybody else who doesn't have a Hork-Bajir morph finally acquires one, which is something that I feel like should have happened a long-ass time ago.
When one of them acquires a big morph, like Hork-Bajir or something like that, they should all do it. That makes sense.
Right? So, and then you got with the seance, Rachel, of course, volunteers to be a host for Aldrea, as does Axe and Toby. But of course, you know, Cassie's the main character in this book, so she chooses her.
We can both agree real quick. I would say the switch up that Cassie's the host is interesting, but the whole rest of the whole seance thing's kind of hokey, right? You agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. I thought it was played for like a comedic effect.
Yeah. Almost like Sam Raimi's Drag Me to Hell. Like that.
Yeah, totally. Like that. Love the reference. Yep. Great movie. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I thought it was just very wacky. It was a sci-fi seance, and it's no surprise that Aldrea chooses Cassie as her host. It takes a little while for her to kind of draw her out, but this is a really interesting story, I guess.
So this does have a subplot.
Well, just the idea that Aldrea chooses Cassie, and it obviously makes Cassie feel very conflicted for several reasons. First of all, because she thinks maybe Aldrea chose her because she's the weakest and she could be taken over and controlled, which we see her do several times throughout the book. So it just adds like a little layer of doubt to the whole situation, which is very nice.
We'll call this C plot.
We'll call it the Z plot. Because it's so irrelevant. No, it's not really irrelevant. Anyway.
No, it is really interesting. I agree with it. It's something she's worrying about, and she comes at it from a bunch of different angles on like, well, maybe she picked me because of this. Maybe she picked me because of this. And it really ties into the ending well, I think.
Yeah, a wee bit. And we even get, chapters from Aldrea's perspective, which is, it's always nice when they do things like this in these books where they break out of the narrating character and go into a different character.
And I think it was a little awkward in this book, jumping to Aldrea suddenly, just because it doesn't fit with any of the formats we've seen before, doing that. But I think it's a nice nod to those who really like the Hork-Bajir Chronicles coming back into this book in the perspective of the narrator from those books. It's great to see her again and be inside her head again. Yeah,
it's very much like the hero from another book that we haven't heard from or seen in a long time takes over. And if you'll recall, Aldrea is not the best person or character, and when I say that, I mean
very gray morality.
Exactly. She's a very flawed protagonist.
And you think about when, at this point, when her memory was recorded, she had been fighting a war on the Hork-Bajir planet. She had gotten used to being a Hork-Bajir. They were fighting guerrilla warfare. It was dirty, dirty war up until the virus was released, which she experienced. So this is a more morally conflicted Aldrea than we even saw throughout most of the Hork-Bajir Chronicles.
Right, and she's just immediately when she's introduced to the team, there's problems. She first of all learns that her and everyone she ever loved are dead, and now she's on this alien world, and she has to cooperate with not only an Arn, which she's not the biggest fan of, but an Andalite as well. And she, as we mentioned, no longer considers herself Andalite. That's something she's very adamant about, is she's constantly referring to herself as a Hork-Bajir. And Axe calls her out on it several times. And her interactions with Axe are really the most interesting part of this book, I think. Because
really
it's
good, yeah.
It's this Andalite character that we know and love, Axe. And Aldrea is just like the foil to that kind of personality, She's everything that Axe isn't.
Not to mention, the biggest thing she's struggling with is the fact that she's not in her own body. She has to share a body with Cassie, and Cassie is putting the foot down as far as controlling it most of the time. So it's a struggle from her from the get-go. Considering by her memory, everything was fine 24 hours ago.
Exactly, yes. So with her in Cassie's body, the team needs to make preparations and stuff before they head out, and they give them a little time to kind of adjust and try out a morph. So Cassie and Rachel and Aldrea head out and try out a wolf morph while the rest of the team kind of flies surveillance, even though they said they're going to go off and make preparations. Cassie's certain that Jake and some of the other members are probably watching them. And this is where we get the idea that Aldrea can sort of wrest control from Cassie when she's not expecting it. And that sets up some conflicts for later in the book.
Yeah, they set up the concept of when this ceremony takes place, the person who goes into the vessel, the memory, it has to leave willingly. It can't just, it can't be forced out in any way. So it sets up a conflict in this book that there's a chance Cassie might never be free of Aldrea once they do this. So that right there is a lot what they're dealing with. It also sets up here this idea that they can shut off their feelings from each other and their memories. So they're sharing the same space, but they can put up a psychic wall between their two personalities. That kind of fizzles out. There's no real payoff on that being important. But they focus on it
not
here.
Not necessarily. I think it's mainly meant to differentiate this whole situation from having a yerk inside your head, because they can cut each other off. She's still in control. And she's had a yerk in her head before too, so she can make that comparison. If this had happened with another character, we wouldn't really have that aspect of it.
It's possible another character could have been overwhelmed too, because Cassie has the experience with the yerk. She's probably best set up to be able to, take control if she has to. But we don't know that at this point in this book.
Right. Well, the team for this mission is going to be, of course, the Animorphs, and Toby Hummy is going to be tagging along with them this time to go on their little journey. And I gotta say, I don't think enough was done with Toby's character in this book, especially when it comes to the ending.
I think they wanted to do something very specific with the ending and kind of have a messed up event happen there, and they needed Toby to be there to do that, so they brought her along.
Yeah, but I don't think it was executed well enough.
I would agree with you that.
Yeah, we'll get to that. So, really, I mean, it's very quick moving, I guess, for the plot, where the team's assembled. They're gonna board this Arn spacecraft, which is just I think it's a yerk fighter that he kind of retooled a bit. As soon as they get inside, Marco makes a crack about, there's a jacuzzi. I want the ladies in it with me. And the Arn convinces everybody that, it's empty. And, I got to say, I really thought that they were going to pull this, the Arn is secretly a controller or something.
Yeah.
I thought they were going to do something more with him for that, but
You might have gotten that feeling because maybe they were trying to... because he's an Arn, because what do we know about them? They might have been trying to kind of play around with the idea that he shouldn't be trusted. Like, I don't think at this point in the book you should completely trust him, because the Animorphs didn't. And neither did, obviously, Aldrea didn't.
Yeah.
So I think they were just trying to play around with that. I don't think it was supposed to be like Chekhov's gun or anything that's going to come back later. But yeah, you're supposed to keep you on your toes.
Right, yeah. And I guess it very much did that, but there was little to no payoff with that. I mean, he was just an old Arn, the last of his species. He knew, that he was going to be dying fairly soon, and he wanted to, as the last act of the Arn race, he wanted to do some good for the Hork-Bajir that they kind of damned,
Which I like. I like that goal. He wasn't, and his motives weren't. His motives were 100% pure. Like, I like that he kind of like, he wanted to do something for the Arn too. He didn't want them to go down in disgrace. He wanted the planet to be saved because they created the planet. I think he was a little selfish, but this is one of those times where his selfish ambitions line up with the good guys' wholesome ambitions, Sure,
as long as he's willing to like do some good, that's all that matters.
Yeah.
So they're flying through Z space with this Arn. It takes 3 days. They kind of skip around a little bit. Cassie mentions, what it's like having Aldrea in her head for all that time. There's actually a reference, I think maybe one of the first in the series, to she says, she's talking about what it's like to have Aldrea in her head. Eating with her, if you could call the concentrated nutrient pellets food. Going to the bathroom with her. A lot more togetherness than I'd have preferred. Bad enough figuring out how to pee in a toilet designed for Hork-Bajir. Worse doing it with an audience in your head.
It's pretty funny, yeah.
So that's just one instance of some of the wacky shenanigans they get up to in Z-space travel.
Yeah, I'd rather jump straight to what happens when they get into Hork-Bajir space. This is really interesting. So the first thing they run into once they come out of space is a Andalite fighter who Axe says that the Andalites kind of any of these homeworlds of the Yeerks or any of the major worlds the Yeerks taken over, the Andalites are always kind of on the edge of space, just annoying them or keeping them on their toes. And this fighter, he sees a Yeerk ship, which is what they've taken to get there, and starts chasing it down, starts going to fire on it. And this leads Axe to a little moral dilemma on whether he would fire on another Andalite fighter who's doing nothing wrong, just, following his commands. And, it gets a little harrowing.
Well, and it's, you have to mention that they're not able to contact this Andalite fighter because they're worried that the Yeerks, will be intercepting signals and stuff. So they can't just send a communication that says, hey, we're the good guys. So they have to actually go into battle with this Andalite ship, and more Yeerk ships, show up to join in and help them out. And then at the very last second, the team kind of helps the Andalite fighter out by shooting at the Yeerk ships, and they team up, and that's really the end of it, I guess.
It's cool.
Nothing else happens.
It's cool though because you have them fight the Andalite ship without really trying to hurt it, and so that makes the Andalite confused. And then once the Yeerk fighters show up, they ignore the Yeerk ship and try to fire on the Andalite ship. And when they take out the Yeerk ships, it's kind of the other Andalite, figures out that they were,
allies,
spy ship or something. It's a really cool communication scene. I think from just, they need an action beat, so they put something like this in here. But I think it's a unique action beat. I think it's cool.
Yeah. I kind of dug it, except that, like I said, I feel like it doesn't go anywhere because they put a lot of emphasis on this, and then after the situation's handled, they just sort of skip over to they're heading down to the planet. I feel like there wasn't a conclusion with this Andalite fighter. Why didn't it try to communicate with them? Why didn't it follow them down to the planet? What did it do? Did it just screw off into space?
Yeah, no. How cool would it have been if at the very end, when they're trying to do this impossible plan, an Andalite fleet came in and helped distract? Like that little Andalite ship went back and hey, something's happening in the Hork-Bajir world. We should attack.
Yeah, and you know what? What I really was disappointed with is the fact that even after the plot wraps up, they didn't then go and contact this Andalite ship and say, hey, humans on Earth need help. Get over there right now.
Yeah, well, I don't think they wanted to. They have to get the humans back home, just story-wise, and they don't want to push... With these ghost-written books, I only think there's so much they can do mythology-wise, and they can't push the end of the series up when they don't know how long the series is going to run.
Sure, yeah. No, there's many reasons why, that would have diverted from the plot at hand, but I just feel like it was kind of a missed opportunity for something.
Yeah, possibly, yeah.
But anyway, they go down to the Hork-Bajir planet, or the Arn planet as he considers it, and they find his lab. It's hidden in the valley. It's a big moment for Aldrea, obviously, to return to her home world where she remembers it, full of trees and life. And when they get there, it's obviously overrun by Yerks and just devastated.
Large swaths of trees have been destroyed. Just the worst you can imagine when the Yerks take over a planet. We've seen and heard of what they do, and this is Aldrea's planet, which she knew 24 hours ago was fine, and now it's a scarred wasteland with a few trees left.
Yeah, Yerk pools, huge Yerk pools. Not a lovely place. And so the Arn kind of like pieces out of the plot and gets to work on supposedly creating some Hork-Bajir warriors to help them out, while everyone else is like, well, I guess we got a weapons stash to look for. And it's a part of the plot that Aldrea doesn't actually know where the weapons are, but she's got an idea of where she would have hid them, I guess.
And she told them... Yeah, she told them before they left that she knew where they were, and she kind of said it in a way that really meant she knew she could find them, but they took it as she knew where they were. So that's kind of a reveal to them that they're hoping she knows where they are. And
they made a very big deal out of it. Cassie does when she tells the team that she doesn't really know where they are, although. Just because they don't have much time in these books, it doesn't really amount to much, because of course she leads them to exactly where it is.
I do think we could have gotten to the Hork-Bajir world earlier in the book. I think they put it off too long.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I'll mention that a little bit more in my review, or go a little bit more in depth with that. But they everybody, they're on the Hork-Bajir planet. Everybody morphs Hork-Bajir, and this is where we get Aldrea actually recognizing that Cassie's got a talent for morphing, which is pretty important to the story.
Yeah, it's incredibly important.
Yeah, and they're swinging through the trees, and Cassie even lets Aldrea take over the body, the Hork-Bajir morph, for a little while, because she's so much more adept at doing this kind of thing. And then they go to the valley area where her and Dak kind of posted up during their time in the war.
And she doesn't necessarily know that's where the weapons are hidden. She really, it's kind of cool how it's written, I think. She goes there kind of convincing herself it might be helpful, but she really just wants to see her home. She almost irrationally thinks maybe there's a chance that Dak and Zero are there, that they're still alive. Maybe this is all just, not what I think it is. And when she comes across, when she actually gets there, it's devastating.
This is classic case of character in denial needs to see it for themselves to really, finally admit it. And that's pretty much what happens. As soon as they get there, she recognizes that her home is destroyed. There's a giant Yerk pool where they used to live. And it's her assumption that that's where she would have hid the weapon, is in this big hollow tree that is now part of the standing Yerk pool there.
Well, it's not an assumption. She sees something on one of the trees. She recognizes one of the trees.
It's their initials. It's Aldrea and Dak's initials.
Well, it's not her initials. It's not their initials. That's a simplification. She calls it Hork-Bajir graffiti. It's the signs for undying love. And she takes that as what her and Dak would have done. would have morphed that tree.
It's the equivalent. It's the alien equivalent of carving your initials in a tree with a heart around it.
Basically, basically.
So that's how she knows. Like, that's where the weapons probably are. I'm surprised the Yeerks didn't burn that away. I
don't think they cared. I think it was just a tree to them, and that was one tiny part of it.
Yeah, but you think Yeerks would get bored at some point and just want to tear shit up.
But no, they say even that it's not like letters. It's literally the way these two branches are bent and this one piece is carved. It probably to them just looked like another part of the tree. It's to a Hork-Bajir, it looks like something specific.
Sure. That's a good way to imagine it. The real problem here is that the entrance to where the ship and weapons are supposedly hidden is inside the Yeerk pool, which is under, the sludgy water.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a big problem. However, their plan to get around that is an old, reliable strategy they've used in multiple books now. And it's a crazy suicidal plan, like always.
I don't think they've used this plan in multiple books.
Well, variations.
No,
okay, they're evolving. They're evolving the plan and adding more steps.
This is so different than anything they've done before. I'll disagree with you on that too.
They've done a couple whale drops now.
They've done one whale drop, and it was an actual whale drop. This is just using the whale.
Okay. Ignoring the whale drop, which they've already done for sure, at least once. They've making it broader. They've had tons of plans that revolved around morphing while falling. Okay,
sure, absolutely, I'll give you that. But that's like saying they've had tons of plans where they morph while they're walking or running. Come on.
I guess so. But the point is, they needed to take the Hork-Bajir controllers here by surprise, as well as they needed to fit like half the team inside of Cassie's mouth.
Yeah, I do wish they would have had more time not seeing the plan, but hearing them plan or set it up. Because they got here so late, they have to kind of rush into the plan. I wish it would have had a little more setup.
Sure, we don't get them talking about the plan, but we get Aldrea's reaction to the plan, which is she's adamantly against it. She thinks it's impossible.
She's desperate. It's not just that she's against it. Up until the point where there's no return, she is fighting for control over Cassie's body to stop this plan from happening.
Yeah, and it's very much kind of like the climax of the showdown between the two of them. So Cassie is, going from bird to whale, and kind of doing like half morphs.
Hold on, you're gliding way too fast over this. So the plan, for those who don't remember this book, is for Cassie to fly in her bird morph to as high as she can get, and then morph down to whale, so that she can enter the water.
Not entirely whale, though.
Not entirely whale, but enter the water with her friends in her mouth who are also morphing to different morphs. So that's why she has to go whale, so that she has a mouth big enough that other morphs can be inside of her and keep her mouth closed the entire time. Oh, and by the way, so that she doesn't kill herself and her friends, she has to keep her bird wings throughout the entire morphing process, almost to the end.
Yeah, so this is a great demonstration of what the morph technology could be used for. I mean, she's like half morphing and morphing specific body parts. Like, this is really, really interesting #morphlore stuff that I really want to see more of in future books. And besides the buffa human I've heard about, yeah. I don't know if we're going to get much of it.
But the fact that Aldrea, on a legendary Andalite who, and Axe, the fact that they're amazed by this shows that very few Andalites who created this technology could have pulled this off, if any. So this moment, and I just want to talk a second about this. This moment, this action scene, I had never read this book before. The way it's written, the pacing it takes, edge of my seat, and all the time is just a beautiful scene. Like an absolutely amazing, maybe the best in the series so far, this one scene.
That's an overstatement, I think.
You can say it's overstatement, but the way that Aldrea is freaking out and trying to take control of her body, which pays off that storyline throughout the entire book. That is she going to take control? Can she take control? Is Cassie weak? Isn't she? The fact that Cassie pushes her aside, is doing this impossible morph, which is exhausting to any other Animorph. And I mean, I'm not speaking lightly about this. We have given Cassie crap throughout this entire book series. Even book 19 and book 29, which are huge Cassie books, where she's at her best. Still, we crapped on Cassie.
I think... Yeah, go ahead.
Hold on. This book made Cassie an incredible part of the series for me. I'd never read this book before. I only knew the ending of the series. This book really made her one of the absolute standouts of character. Her arc up to this point, who she is, what she cares about, all of that matters so much more to me because of this one scene. And
what this really did was prove that Cassie has the mental fortitude to do this kind of stuff, and that she's really progressed as a character. Yeah, like you said, in those first books, they were really about her struggles, and I think just kind of her weaknesses. Whereas this is kind of showing that, man, she's progressed a lot. She's doing these tiresome morphs. She's battling with a force inside of her that's trying to take control. She eventually does, succeed in her mission, and she even passes out a little bit and luckily has Aldrea inside of her to kind of take over. Otherwise, she might have lost consciousness and possibly died.
To put it in this perspective. Because of this scene, and people can complain about canon and the ghostwritten books all they want, but this is a well-written book. I mean, this is one of the ghostwriters we actually respect. It has a lot of flaws, and it has a lot of really rough parts. But this scene and how well it's done, this literally defines Cassie as the most powerful character in the series as far as a human character. She is the most powerful Animorph. She is better than all of them at this, and not just better in a beautiful way. She is the most powerful Animorph because of this scene. She can do more than them and use the power in a way that they can barely imagine.
Jeez, love her so much. Why don't you marry her?
This is coming from the person. I got bad reviews at the start of this podcast because how much I hated Cassie. So for this turnabout, I'm not just doing it for an exciting drama of the podcast. This really changed how I look at Cassie in this series, and I think that's a big deal. And the fact that it was done by a ghostwriter, even more so, just really blew my mind when I was reading this. And it really is, the writing is impeccable in this scene. Throughout this to the end of the book, in my mind, is some of the best writing of the series.
It's a pretty good action scene. We've got, I think it's Jake and Rachel who go hammerhead shark morph inside the Yerk pool, which is just badass, I think. And they're tearing apart Taxons and stuff. And Cassie even mentions, like, oh man, I feel bad for them because it's awful what they're doing. Being sharks and having to like tear apart Taxons. It's not particularly hard or dangerous, but just nasty. Nasty
and then
stuff.
Tobias comes back with his axe morph, and him and Axe go full Andalite just into the swarm of enemies.
That's just something I wish they'd have spent a little bit more time on. Yeah, I would have loved to have a good 2 Andalite scene where they're tearing stuff up.
Which you have to imagine that Tobias and Axe in their alone time are like Axe is teaching him how to fight and teaching him the different stances for fighting and stuff. So like this is really a big payoff for that.
Yeah, it would have been awesome, especially if we, seen it like in a visual format.
This could have been a Megamorphs book in my mind. This would have been better as a Megamorphs book.
Oh, actually, yeah. That'll definitely factor into the old review. But while this whole big struggle is going on, and I love that Marco is in Hork-Bajir just trying to cause panic, and he's like, Andalites are coming, everybody run, there's millions of them. Like, that was adding to the chaos.
Such a Marco moment, yeah.
Yeah, and it's a genuine good strategy. Try to psych out your opponents, whatever.
Yeah, and it works, yeah.
So they're mucking around in the Yerk pool, and it's very tense. Like, is she gonna find the entrance to the thing or not? And needless to say, I think it's pretty obvious. Yes, she does. And they get inside this hollowed out log area where the stolen Yerk ship and weapons.
I do want to say
hidden.
one more thing about just the plan initiation in general. I really like that. Obviously, Aldrea's freaking out about this plan, hates the plan, thinks it's really dumb. She wants to do like what she was doing before on the planet, like guerrilla warfare.
Exactly. She wants to take a long time and make a big deal out of it and kind of extend, her stay in this world.
Whereas Jake's like, well, let's get it done in an afternoon. Why would we have to wait?
Yeah,
but it's great scene. It's another one of those moments like we talk about how whenever anyone else gets morphing powers, it shows how dangerous the Animorphs are. A scene like this from an outside perspective shows how much they've grown as a war device, as a fighting unit. They're not just a little squad who can complete a mission anymore. They're a special tactics hardcore force. They're the Marines. They're not the Marines. They're the Navy SEALs now, where they can initiate impossible plans and actually come away from it.
Exactly. Yeah, they've definitely advanced, and it's really cool that Aldrea is like questioning them the whole time, and you've got like Toby who is vouching for him, and she's like, they know quite a bit about war. They've been doing this a while now. They kind of freed the whole Hork-Bajir Valley back on Earth, and like Aldrea doubts them. And I don't think she has reason to. She certainly doesn't after this whole thing. This is kind of where, she finally gives in to Cassie and acknowledges that she's the best morpher she's ever seen. This is where she wins Aldrea over with her talents.
Yeah.
And it's really this event that makes Aldrea realize that she can't cling to this existence like she's planned to do or had hinted that she might want to do. We got points in the book where she's talking about, maybe I'll get to see Toby's kid in the future or whatever. Like she's planning to stick around a lot longer than the team is planning for her to stick around,
I do want to, real quick, we passed over one of my only notes to the end.
Sure.
It's just, I just want to read a small excerpt that's in my mind kind of just sums up like what Cassie did, that action scene, and the writing, how well it is. Just real quick. Cassie steadied herself. I felt her exhaustion. You're tired? Yeah. It's a miracle you're alive. Yeah. She began to morph. Hork-Bajir features appeared, but more slowly now. Too many morphs too quickly, and each a work of art. That's just, I think, really good writing. Like, just saying how, like, she did so many morphs over and over again. Each one would have been almost impossible for any of them. Yeah, it would have been a very tiring event, exactly. And Cassie goes through it flawlessly. So once they find this Yerk ship, there's not much left. I mean, they just kind of blast their way out, and they destroy the Yerk pool. And this is cool because, they kind of have to destroy the Yerk pool to get out. But even so, Cassie still feels guilt. And Aldrea even, kind of takes Axe aside and is like, I sense that these humans are not happy about their success here. And, it's just a very good comment on, like, the morality and, sometimes you have to do the wrong thing in order to do the right thing. Right? Yeah, and you have a little bit of a completion of that, the strife between Axe and Aldrea. How Aldrea kind of accepts that she was an Andalite, and she even says, ready, Andalite brother? And he goes, yes, Hork-Bajir sister. I thought that was a cool little 2 lines. Just kind of them accepting
I guess
each other's.
that snuck past me there. Good find.
Statement on identity right there, I think, very culturally relevant.
Yeah, because the whole time, Axe, like I said, Aldrea is referring to herself as Hork-Bajir, and Axe is quick to call her out on it. And yeah, that's a very nice wrap up to that, where he finally is like, fine, whatever, you can be a Hork-Bajir. You can be whatever you want, little dead girl. So they take the ship and the weapons back to the Arn, Quafiginivan. I don't think we'll ever see him again. Rest his soul. And they take him back, and they're gonna blast off and leave, because the Arn's got to take them back to Earth. And this is where we've got the final wrap up between Aldrea and Cassie, where Aldrea can acknowledge Cassie's talent and ability, and she knows what she has to do now, and that's go back into the bottle.
And also, Toby came on this mission expecting to lead the new Free Hork-Bajir, and Aldrea decides that her great granddaughter should be on Earth with her grandson. Yes, grandson. And should be with the Free Hork-Bajir who are fighting on Earth. So they kind of have to trick Toby into going back to Earth because she's dedicated to this new life.
Yeah, and this was something that I feel like was just tucked in here because they needed a tiny bit of final conflict at the end. I think it's a plot line that wasn't elaborated on enough throughout the story, and it just wasn't working for me here at the end. So,
but I think what they were going for here was to have Aldrea basically ruining her legacy in Toby's eyes. So I think she was going to pretend to want to keep the body and take over it, even though there's a beautiful scene where Aldrea says she needed Cassie as a vessel, wrapping up the other subplot. The reason she thinks that her consciousness chose Cassie is because she needed someone to challenge her on her morality and then be able to make the right choice, which the right choice is to leave the body and die again and stay dead.
Yeah.
And so I think with Toby, there should have been basically another subplot where she really cared about the legacy of how she's remembered to the Hork-Bajir, and this would have ruined that. I wouldn't be surprised if they excised that from the book or something.
Yeah, maybe. It just felt very tacked on, rushed, and not the kind of wrap-up you want to see from these books.
It doesn't work super well. But I think the ending chapter in general works. I think this, whatever they tried to do right here, it should have been set up, and there should have been more to it.
Yeah, totally. Because it ends very abruptly with, her suddenly deciding, I'm going to try and take over Cassie's body to, ruin Toby's idea. And then Axe has to, say he's taking Toby hostage, and it just really glosses over Toby's reaction to everything. I felt like Toby was completely neglected as a character in this story, but they had to include her. It just would have been much better to have more of Toby's perspective on everything.
Honestly, I would not be surprised if this manuscript didn't start out as just another Animorphs book. If it started off as almost a sequel to the Hork-Bajir Chronicles. Because they're dealing with big material here. And I bet there were more subplots. I bet there was more to it. And they just had to cut it down, or they didn't have time to write a full sequel or something. I bet there's a story behind this book, is what I'm saying. And I bet they meant to do more with Toby and to do this big morality thing at the end, which is what we got. It's not fully fleshed out.
Yeah, totally agree with you there. So, well, that's it. Do you want to jump into our reviews?
Yeah, you go ahead, go first.
Sure, my friend. Well, I don't know what you're thinking I thought of this book. I think I was pretty kind to it as we were going through and discussing it. There were just some things that didn't quite work out that well for me. And I'll tell you what I didn't like, and then I'll tell you what I did like. So that beginning chapter, like I said, I thought was just a throwaway, dumb idea. I would have really liked to see this book start out with them, at the Hork-Bajir Valley. They could have even started it on the spaceship, heading to the Hork-Bajir homeworld with Aldrea and Cassie's head, and then had Cassie kind of review, what brought them there. We found Jeremy, and the Arn came, and blah, blah, blah. And, I really think that this book could have been more if it had been, like you said, another Megamorphs book, or if they'd have just done it as a two-parter. As a two-parter, they could have done so much more with the story, these characters. I think we could have gotten so much more out of Aldrea, out of Toby, out of Quafinjivivan.
Yeah.
like they didn't utilize them to their maximum storyline potential. And I feel like now they're just kind of wasted because they're going to disappear after this book. It's unfortunate that they had to try and cram everything into these parameters of like 150 pages or whatever it is. So overall, though, I mean, the storyline is great. I think it's a good plot, solid story. Everything moves at a pace that's acceptable. It had good tension with the drama between Aldrea and Cassie, occupying Cassie's body. The whole, is she going to leave? Is she going to, become a villain? Like, I think if they'd have done a two-parter, they could have ended the first book with Aldrea being like, well, I'm not leaving Cassie's body. I'm in charge now. What are you going to do about it? And then that would have been a great cliffhanger. And then it'd have set up a whole another book that we could have dived more into this. Maybe given Toby a bigger role to play. And then, like you said, had that moment where Aldrea's legacy, she chooses to like ruin it in order to save Toby. They could have just done so much more with it. It could have been wonderful. But instead we get this kind of middle of the road book where, the Animorphs have a task. There's something that's kind of working against them, which is Aldrea and her whole dynamic with the team. And it's a very cut and paste mission. It's really nothing special. I mean, it's just go to a place, do the mission, leave. Like, we've seen that format in so many other books. But I don't know, man. I dug it. It's just not the best Animorphs book when you compare it to some of the others. Still better than the Starfish book. I'll give it that. The things I liked about it, like I said, just Aldrea's interactions with the team, in particular with Axe, great stuff. It really, really progresses Cassie's character, like you said, makes her more of a real, fleshed out member of the team. She's no longer this like doubting girl, which is actually what she starts out at the beginning of this book. She doubts herself, and I think it's Aldrea who helps her come to the realization that she's stronger than she gives herself credit for. So it's going to be really cool following along with Cassie from now on. I think her future books coming up are going to be really something I look forward to now. All in all, though, I just think it's kind of a middle-of-the-road Animorphs book. And for that, I give it three Quaffigini the last remaining Arn. So that's where I'm sitting at this.
That would have been a cool title for a book.
the last Arn?
His name and then the last Arn. That would have been
cool.
Oh,
yeah.
Quaffigini.
Nice try.
Well, I don't have it sitting in front of me. I didn't write it down.
Neither do I. I'm pulling it out of my memory banks.
You like practiced or something.
Well, yeah.
Anyway, so I'm glad you gave it at least a 3. I can completely understand that score. I really struggled with my score for this one because there are parts of this book, like I said, I'm not blowing smoke. I thought some of this writing was some of the best of the series. And it comes back to this ghostwriter. This ghostwriter is exceptional. I mean, really, really good. And I think there was some behind-the-scenes struggle with this book. We don't know the whole story. I'd love to chalk it up to things we'd love to ask Kay Applegate and Michael Grant next time we talk to them. But something happened where this book, where it was a much bigger idea and had to be condensed down into a normal book. And I think it suffered for that. It's got some really rough parts, probably a rushed production on top of whatever other issues they were having. The writing is quick, and I think she still holds it together. I think it is paced well. Super tense moments. Beautiful ending action scene that really hits the heartstrings as well as the edge of your seat thrill ride that we expect from some of these books, and does it in a way that takes it up to the next level. I think they killed it with this finale, and I think it asked a lot of questions that we're interested in. If you loved the Hork-Bajir Chronicles and really got into that series, it's really great that they came back to it and gave it a sequel. I mean, they could have done this for every Chronicles and Megamorphs book, just dedicated one more of the regular series to kind of like giving you a little more, or wrapping up something, or bringing back an enemy. I think that's a really cool idea. I wasn't expecting just randomly in the 30s of this series. So I really liked this book, and I know this sounds crazy. Up until we started talking, I was really thinking about giving it a 5. because of the mythology that it adds, going back to Aldrea, how good the writing is in this book. But talking to you, it would be unfair of me to give it a 5 because I can accept that there are rough parts of this book. Something
you're gonna give it a
wrong.
4. I already know.
Yeah, yeah, the spoilers. I have to give it a 4. It's still an exceptional book. I think it is necessary to read. You're gonna have to slog through a couple parts that aren't bad writing necessarily. They're just kind of hokey and don't really work. But when you get to the good stuff, it is really, really good. So I give it 4 out of 5 free Hork-Bajir clones. It's just
The Clone Army.
Exactly. Hey, Phantom Menace was already referenced, and here's the Attack of the Clones. So
there you go.
I can't wait till the Revenge of the Yeerks in the next one. That'll be great.
The Revenge of the Arn. It's coming.
Revenge of the Arn. Yeah, that'd be a great trilogy. But yeah, I mean, yeah. So I struggled with this one a lot. I really like it. I think you can't skip this one. You agree with me? This is an important book to the series, at least.
You can skip it.
I don't think you can skip. I think for the plot, you could skip it. I think for what it does to Cassie as a character, that alone, you can't skip it.
Yeah, and it pairs very nicely with the Hork-Bajir Chronicles. It's a good send-off to Aldrea. Aldrea was not a particularly well-liked character when she was first introduced. A lot of the same problems, just kind of her personality. She's, not very likable.
Here, I'm going to tie this into some other nerd culture real quick. This is
Alien I just want to say one last thing.
Okay,
damn it, before you interrupt me, I just wanted to say that this is Aldrea's kind of redemption. It's very much the same thing. You don't like her for a long period of the story, and then she does the right thing in the end. That's just kind of who Aldrea is.
Yeah. No,
anyway, give me your stupid analogy now.
Yeah, so this is the Alien 3 of, Alien Covenant just came out. This is the Alien 3 of the Andalite series with the Hork-Bajir Chronicles. You have this returning character, this female, who comes back. Parts of the movie don't work. It's not all good. You need the director's cut to really enjoy the movie, really. But at the end of it, she dies again. She kills the alien. She wipes it out. And, it's kind of a melancholy ending for her character. Same thing as Ripley in Alien 3. So, I really enjoy this book, and I think it's great if you like the Hork-Bajir Chronicles, which both of us did. So I agree with you.
Yeah, not a bad time per se. I can tell you, though, that I am looking more forward to what is coming up in the future for us.
Well, we got a Marco book next, is that correct?
Not only do we have a Marco book, the proposal...
But it ties into Visor.
Oh, heck yeah, bro. We are closing in on Visor, one that I have just been dying to reread since the first and only time I read it several years ago. So I just can't wait to dive back into that and see what I might have missed or overlooked that first read through.
If you yearn for the days of Thoughtspeak where we were, pushing out 3-hour episodes, wait until Visor. I guarantee we're going to have a lot to talk about.
We'll see, man. I hope.
Yeah, I mean, if it holds up. I have read it several times, and it's easily one of my favorite books, even outside of the series. It goes into what is humanity? Do we deserve to be free? I mean, it's an amazing, amazing book.
Asks the hard-hitting questions.
Yeah. So... Man, I'm glad to be back. I'm glad we got to talk about this book that neither of us had read before. I think it was a great way to jump back in. I can't wait for what's coming up. It's just an exciting time to be a Thoughtspeak fan and to be a Thoughtspeak host, I think.
I'm digging it. I'm both.
Yeah, exactly. Again, we can't appreciate enough the people on Patreon who are subscribing to Thoughtspeak. They're making us want to put out these episodes as fast as possible, not take these breaks, do more with the Animorphs community, build a new website, do all these things. That'll be great. If you want to jump on there, it's patreon.com/Thoughtspeakcast. Check it out. See what the rewards are. If they fit with you, think about subscribing for $1, $2, whatever feels right to you. helps us pay for the show and keep going. As Mitch mentioned, iTunes, love your ratings and reviews on there. We'll read them on the air, good or bad. Just love getting new iTunes ratings. Helps new people find the show. Helps old people find the show. It's great for us. We also have a Twitter and a Facebook. You can email us your questions, thoughts, disagreements, arguments, whatever you want at thoughtspeakcast@gmail.com, and we will most likely read that on the air as well because we love responding to you guys.
Absolutely. One of the best parts about doing this show.
Yeah. So again, thank you guys. We appreciate every single one of you. I love doing this show. I love continuing it. We're in the 30s. We're getting there. We've got some.
We're so close to the 40s, man. A lot of the books that I haven't even read yet.
The 40s are where Animorphs is like, I don't have much time left. I'm gonna get weird with the rest of this time. So
this is the part of the series where they morphed into a shark and then they jumped another shark.
Yeah,
you know
it's
what I'm saying? Like
I get the reference. I get the TV trope reference.
The plots are going off the rails here.
Exactly. But appreciate you guys listening. Hope you enjoyed the episode. We'll catch you on the next one. I've been Coleman.
And I have been Mitchell saying, until the next Thought Speak, we will be back, and we look forward to it. That's it. Peace out, everybody.
Have a good one.